we're expecting that Australia will achieve widespread vaccination of its population, or at least 60% coverage by the first quarter of next year. Now, we had originally expected it could be even faster, but as you mentioned, there were some regulatory delays in Australia that meant the commencement of the vaccination timeline was a little bit later than we had first anticipated. But Australia does have many factors that work to its advantage, such as a relatively small population and also robust healthcare resources, logistics networks, and number of healthcare workers, for example.
Well, the countries that will complete vaccination first, is it purely due to the fact that they do have smaller populations, or is that not the case?
I don't think it's necessarily the case. The important thing to look at is both the supply of vaccines, whether the government is able to procure enough to vaccinate the population, and also the ratio of healthcare workers to administer the vaccines relative to the overall population size. So, for example, we have some developing countries in Asia which are relatively small, for example, Timor Leste. But because of the lack of healthcare resources, we're not actually expecting them to achieve widespread vaccination for many years. So it's not necessarily a simple question of the population size.
I guess a good example of that is China. Given its population, it's doing particularly well with an estimated completion date of the second quarter of next year.
Yes, that's right. China and also India have the largest populations in Asia. So they're facing quite a big challenge when it comes to their vaccination programs. But China really has been surging ahead. And we had originally expected it to achieve widespread vaccination in late 2022, but we've now brought that timeline forward because of faster than expected vaccination rates, especially in urban areas. And I think that robust healthcare resources in China and also its large manufacturing capacity has really worked to its advantage.
With regards to India, what impact will its restrictions on vaccine exports have on other countries?
Yes, I think this is really integral for developing countries in Asia because India was originally meant to supply 80% of the vaccines for the COVAX program, which is an initiative dedicated to ensuring equitable vaccine access around the world, led by the WHO. So with the export bans that India has introduced to reprioritize supply for its domestic population amid the worsening outbreak there, those developing countries will have to wait longer before they can receive vaccination supplies, and therefore it will drag out their programs longer.
What are some of the other barriers to faster vaccination rates in Asia?
I think at the moment, supply is definitely the greatest issue, especially with the export bans or controls that many vaccine-producing countries have put in place, including the US with controls on vaccine inputs, the EU, and also now India. So this has meant actually that many countries have been turning instead to China or Russia for supplies because neither of those countries have controls on their exports of vaccines.
And Imogen, there's been a lot of talk about patent waivers when it comes to vaccines. What are they and what are the pros and cons?
Yeah, so the US has just announced that it will back a decision or a proposal that was put forward by South Africa and India at the World Trade Organization to grant a temporary waiver on the rights for COVID vaccines. And this is motivated by the fact that there has emerged this great discrepancy in vaccine access around the world, with the majority of supply going to developed populations. And I think the US has realized, especially with the spike in cases in India, that this later down the line could leave, the global population more at risk to COVID. And it is in their interest to support vaccination in other countries as well. So what this would do is it would prevent pharmaceutical companies from claiming IP protection on the vaccines that they have produced. And the US was concerned previously that this might reduce the incentives for vaccine manufacturers to make vaccines. But now they have made a U-turn. And I think actually it's probably Europe, notably Germany, that has a lot to lose from this waiver, because BioNTech is one of the manufacturers of the more innovative mRNA vaccine. This is a type of vaccine never used before, and they were originally expecting to derive large revenues from their sales of mRNA vaccines. So it's not clear exactly by how much, but this could cut into their profits.
Imogen Page-Jarrett, thanks so much. Good to talk.
Thank you.